Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Degenerate Era Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that I came across the other day. I'd never heard of this before, so I wanted to look into it. Caught my eye a wee bit, kind of interesting. The question in place: was the moon created inside the Earth? So, before we have a look at this new theory that would seem to indicate that the moon was indeed created within the Earth, we're going to have to look at the old model, the model that's been accepted by most for a while, which has recently been revised to help answer a couple of questions that it itself can't. So what was the old theory? Well, I'm going to have to jump all the way back to the very end of the 19th century. A dude called George Darwin first hypothesized in 1898 that the Earth and the Moon used to be one celestial body, that they were one and the same, that they started off as one big rock, and somewhere down the line they became the two that they are today. So utilizing Newtonian mechanics, Darwin managed to note that the Moon used to orbit closer than it currently is, something that was actually later confirmed by American and Soviet experiments. However, Darwin's calculations failed to explain the moon's route back to Earth, and so he was a little bit stumped. Later on, in 1946, Reginald Daly, and then in 1975, a couple of doctors called William Hartmann and Donald Davis, as well as later on again, a couple of astronomers called Alistair G.W. Cameron and William R. Ward, all helped to refine this theory, and it would go on to be known as a giant impact hypothesis, sometimes called the Big Splash, other times called the Theia impact. So this theory, this hypothesis, states that the moon coalesced out of a debris disk which formed around Earth after an impact between the Earth and an astronomical body which was roughly the size of Mars about 4.5 billion years ago. This would have happened soon after the formation of our solar system, probably somewhere between 10 and 100 million years after the solar system had started to form. Initially, this was believed to have been a slow velocity, slight angled impact, but later tests and experiments done on the level of oxygen isotopes found in lunar rocks showed that they were abundant enough that it would seem to indicate that a vigorous mixing of far more matter had happened, and that the collision of the Theia collision actually happened at a far steeper angle than initially believed. It's also believed that the whole process of the debris coalescing into the moon from that disk that had formed around the Earth happened in as short a time as a month, or definitely no longer than a century. There are a couple of issues with this hypothesis, which we'll get to a little bit later on, which are in part actually answered by this new theory of the Earth being created the moon being created inside the Earth. So who is it that's came up with this new theory? The woman's name in question, Dr. Sarah Stewart, a professor of the Earth and Planetary Sciences at the University of California, Davis and Harvard. Basically, her and her team have been working to try and sort, or at least answer, some of the problem questions with the giant impact hypothesis, helping to perhaps rectify a couple of lunar formation issues in the process. I actually came across this chick by mistake, scouring YouTube. She was doing a TED talk on this very matter. That's what made me click, and that's what had tweaked my interest. It's why I went on a little venture to read up on this and learn a wee bit more about it. So she states, and these are quotes: "The new work explains features of the moon that are hard to resolve with current ideas. The moon is chemically almost the same as Earth, but with some slight differences, and this is the first model that can match the pattern of the moon's composition. So the latest hypothesis is what's known as the Synestia model. The Synestia is a hypothesized donut-shaped mass of vaporized rock in space which spins so rapidly that the velocity at the equator is greater than that of the orbital velocity. The orbital velocity is the speed which is required to achieve a balance between the gravitational pull on a satellite or a moon and then the inertia of that moon or that satellite's tendency to keep on moving. In the case of the Synestia, this means that part of the body is orbiting around itself at immense speeds, puffing out in that donut shape, but it's such an immense heat that they will shrink pretty quickly as they radiate away that energy. Like the previous theory, there is an impact between Earth and another celestial object, but rather than this collision causing debris to be spewed into space, which would eventually come together and form in the moon, this collision results in the Earth being spun out at such a rate, with such massive amounts of energy being applied, that the Earth now transforms into the Synestia, a Synestia Earth. The resulting inner region is rotating at one speed, with that swollen, expansive, donut-shaped gathering of matter orbiting above. As the Synestia cools, droplets in the body's outer region would form and rain inwards, with any remaining mass on the outside of the Roche limit of the inner region combining together as moonlets and then subsequently one moon, our moon. The Roche limit is usually applied to disintegrating satellites, with that limit being the distance within which a celestial body, which is held together only by its own gravity, will disintegrate due to tidal forces being applied from a second celestial body being present. That figure would outweigh the first gravitational self-attraction, and basically that means that on the inner limits of the Roche limit, you would see a satellite disperse and disintegrate, forming rings where mass on the outside of that limit would coalesce together. So if you can try and imagine what that may look like, as seen in the picture here, through time, with the moon being formed on the outer limits of the Synestia, it would gradually form into the moon, and then as the Synestia cools, the moon would gradually come out from the Synestia and move away, and then through time the Synestia would then cool quite rapidly, and it then would transform back into an Earth-like state. And it's actually this sort of idea that helps to explain why the Synestia is the prevailing theory over that of the Big Splash. So the moon being formed there in that region, it's going to be subjected to massive pressures, that of 10 Earths. It's going to be subjected to massive temperatures, thousands of degrees Fahrenheit. Some elements, or a lot of elements, have been vaporized by the time the new moon eventually breaks from the Synestia, and then because the Synestia takes a bit longer to cool and form into the Earth, that allows for the accretion of more volatile elements, which we see on the planet here, which we don't see in the moon, even though the Earth and the moon have an identical geochemistry. There are a couple of other things that the Synestia helps to maybe not explain, but at least sort of tries to tackle those problem issues with a lot of other planets and moons being formed in the solar system, such as why Venus doesn't have a moon like Earth, even though it was probably subjected to a lot of impacts as a younger planet. So I haven't quite delved into any of that yet. Really, just what I've been speaking about so far for this 9.5 minutes there. Done a little reading on it. It's pretty cool. I always like to believe in science, but at the same time, science was one of those things that you should always be looking for new answers or looking to refine our understanding. We should never think that we know all the answers, right? So I like this theory. I think this is a pretty cool theory, because it does begin to tackle a couple of unanswered questions that older hypotheses have failed to answer. We should always be looking to further explain, to learn more, to gain more knowledge. And a little cool thing that I was thinking of, there may be the people that would say, well, where is the Synestia? Why have we never seen one? We need to remember that these things are formed after an impact between two celestial bodies that are still going through the primitive stages of their formation. So it would make sense that unless we were looking right into the middle of a galaxy or a solar system that was currently just forming within that first 10 to 100 million years after its formation, that we probably wouldn't see something like this, much like a black hole. The black hole, we've never actually seen one of those. If it looks like, if it acts like a black hole, if the math say it looks like a black hole, if it bends light like a black hole, and it does this other things like a black hole, we call it a black hole. So I like these theories. I like when they tackle unanswered issues, and it's something that might be worth keeping a little eye on. So anyway, up to you guys. What do you think? Anyone see this video? What do you think? Have you heard this theory before? Do you think that this theory holds more weight than the big splash, the Theia impact? Or did you believe in that one beforehand? I don't know. Great thing about science. Loads of thinking, loads of questions, loads of answers, but way more answers to be found. Anyway, that is it for this, the very, very first episode in the Degenerate Era Podcast. I hope this has been relatively informative and fun. So, peace out.